What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Let's Talk Live here on the LTL Media channel. And it is the eve before 4th of July, our Independence Day. And I want to welcome everybody in here to the live show. I have such a great show put together here tonight. We're going to have our attorney Mark Bederow on. We have Mazza Media over here. I'll just let you know this. Jess was scheduled to join us tonight, but she's actually working on breaking a major story that's taken her about a year to put together. So she's not going to be on the panel tonight, but I did leave the link open to her if she wanted to join a little later in the episode. So we will, of course, Jess, if you're watching anytime, just jump in on the show and we'll go from there. So we're going to obviously talk about today the Karen Read verdict. I thought it'd be a great time to have Mark over here. I know he's been doing he's very popular. He's on a lot of channels lately, and I'm honored to have him here. And of course, my buddy Maz to come hang out with us tonight. So let's not wait too much longer. We'll bring everybody in and kind of kick off the show here. So let me just bring in Maz first. Maz, how's it going? I can't hear you. I think you might be muted.
Okay, there we go. Thanks for having me, Brian. Happy to be here.
Yeah, of course.
Get the new headset. I'm using the handheld thing. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
And of course, the talented Mark Bederow. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Love the hat.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So I want to kick it off. I know that you had a big win today, and everybody's been asking about that. So I'll let you have the floor and let everybody know about what happened in your world today.
Just a big one. You know, over the course of your life as a lawyer, you get a handful of real big ones of just actually innocent, good people that are getting screwed by the system. And today was one of those. It's been going on for 2.5 years, fighting relentlessly against the Queens, New York DA's office, prosecuting an innocent woman who was just abused for years by her husband, who was not a good guy, most likely killed someone, dumped a bunch of stuff in her apartment. They live separately. And these people in the DA's office wanted to prosecute her for having 8 firearms in her closet, but it was a closet being exclusively used by her husband. Everything in there belonged to him. She had no knowledge of this. And these people in the Queens DA's office just wouldn't let go of this. Even after this guy actually blew his own head off and left a suicide note professing her innocence, they wouldn't do it. And this just went on and on. They put this woman through absolute hell. She was facing a mandatory prison sentence for somebody who's, 63 years old, has been a registered nurse half of her life, never been arrested, never been in trouble. Her only crime was marrying someone who was not a good guy, but the heart wants what the heart wants periodically. And to see her suffer through this was torture. The trial was 2 months, which is ridiculous. It's about the same length as the Karen Read trial, but this was nothing like that. I mean, much less charges than that. And to watch her get attacked, being accused of fabricating some of this domestic violence, being accused of planting evidence in his apartment, all kinds of just terrible stuff. And today was Judgment Day, and the judge, acquitted her of 18 out of 18 charges, walked her out of there. And that's an all-timer. So that's one that will stay in the brain again on that top shelf for a long time, no matter what else I do, no matter what else I've done. So it's a big one, really big one. Feel great for her.
It's interesting that you say, you talked about being acquitted and then just walking out. And this was a lot of the misconception, I think, that was out there. And Karen's verdict, the other hung jury, but
unverdict,
we were talking at the unverdict. We were talking about, what's going to happen. I think people sometimes think it's like a movie. You get acquitted, you just stand up and you walk out. They actually have to process a lot of paperwork before someone walks out, correct?
When you get acquitted,
really?
I mean, listen, in all fairness, this is a better result than Karen got because it's over. Right. I mean, and by the way, her day is coming. We all know that. Yeah. But no, when you get acquitted, I mean, it's literally I find you not guilty, and Miss Hirsch, you're free to go, and you walk out and you're see you later. That's it. And then you leave the
Really?
DA sitting there looking around like a, bunch of dopes, scratching their heads, looking at their 30 colleagues in the audience who came down to watch this as if, your zoo animals on display for this production. So yeah, no, when you're acquitted, out you go. That's
I
it.
didn't
Never
know that.
come back.
I thought it was more like you got to process paperwork and, you walk out and something,
Nope.
because that was kind of the room around court. Like, if Karen gets acquitted today, she's not going to be able to just walk out. She's going to have to process paperwork, and stuff like that. I did not know that. So thank you.
I mean, with Karen, I guess there'd be bail paperwork and stuff like that. But I mean, that's
Sure.
kind of like, who cares? If she was acquitted, she would have walked right out and let the lawyers deal with that another day and take their victory lap and get the hell out of there. And so for us today, we were able to, get the hell out of there, never to go back. So
That's great.
very, very satisfying. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Let's do this. I'm just going to get caught up on some of the super chats real quick, and then we'll get into the presentation that I have tonight. So, Jackie, thank you for becoming a new member. I appreciate that. Donna says, buy you and your girl some burgers and fries. You both work hard. Happy 4th of July to both of you. Thank you, Donna, for the 20. I appreciate that. Carol, new member. Thank you for becoming a new member. Amy, thank you so much for becoming a new member as well. Bex has joined the membership as well. Thank you so much. Jill, a $5.99. So, wanted to give a quick congratulations to Mark on his amazing victory today. Way to go!
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep, Randall, Bederow for president. They want you as president, Mark. President Bederow.
Just
The only choice.
I'm just a lawyer with sharp elbows, no more, no less.
I thought you were a real estate attorney.
So they say up in the attic, but yeah.
Trish,
listen and learn, buddy in yellow.
We got a $2 from Sarah, says congratulations. Melly says congratulations, Mark, a $2. Thank you. And then Moxie is becoming a new member as well too. All right, let me get this up and we'll go through some of this tonight. Let me just share my screen. So I got obviously we want to start this off. Happy the eve of 4th of July, but everybody be safe this weekend. I just want to wish everybody a happy 4th. Okay, so obviously we had the hung jury on Monday, and I'm just curious, just start it off. I mean, we'll go to Mark first. Your reaction, your opinion, your reaction. What do you think?
I'm surprised. I mean, as a legal exercise, there's just so much reasonable doubt everywhere. But of course, you never know with any individual juror what they're thinking. I mean, you'll never know. They go in the jury room, they deliberate privately, they have their own experiences, biases, whatever. And with a jury, there's always going to be risk. You've heard kind of various reports of what the breakdown is. I naturally assumed that maybe it was 10-1 or 10-2, 11-1 for acquittal, just because it's such a strong acquittal case. Mm-hmm. Then I heard reports that it was 6-6. Mind you, none of these actual deliberating jurors have spoken, so I'm kind of waiting for that if that happens. But if it was 6-6, if that's true, that is mind-boggling to me. I don't know how. And again, what do we know? We're just opining on things that we don't know what anybody's deliberating. But based on watching the evidence, 6-6 is shocking beyond belief and quite disturbing, because this is, to me, a heavy acquittal case. I think it's an actual innocence case, believe it or not. I mean, to the extent there was any doubt about that, I think the ARCA stuff makes it clear that it wasn't a car accident. And if it's not a car accident, people, on the other side don't want to hear this, but that kind of tends to establish that means she didn't do it. And if she didn't do it, then she's innocent. And you just kind of have to accept that. That may be upsetting to some of these people, but that's what it intellectually suggests. So I'm stunned that this case is not over.
Yeah. Maz, your reaction when you heard you were out there with me. You know how I reacted.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I do.
I was pretty emotional when I heard it.
Yeah.
I'll let Maz comment, and then I'll talk about, how I kind of reacted to it.
Well, initially, my reactions kind of changed over time. I had an initial reaction, and then it kind of became what the reaction ended up evolving to, which was I was kind of very pumped up for the first half an hour afterwards. I was extremely positive, and I kind of call it the 60% victory,
Yeah.
meaning that, it's not 50-50 because the burden of proof's on the prosecution. And, and then basically we kind of walked away with what I'd consider a victory, but not the ultimate victory. So I was very excited. I was enthusiastic. I probably was one of the more enthusiastic people out there, of course. But I also am under the belief that perhaps this attempt at another trial here will probably fall short because they're not going to be able to get enough people to be qualified to be on the jury that haven't heard of the case yet when they go into potentially late summer, early fall. So I was extremely excited. Am I breaking up at all? How's my audio? I'm getting some
Breaking up
reports
a
of audio.
little bit, just a
I
little
am?
bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, should be on full charge. But yeah, I was very enthusiastic. And then after that, I was kind of sickened after a while because it's like,
Taking
well, this
forever.
thing, yeah, this thing won't end now, and it's still going on. And now I'm kind of almost disgusted now, where I was very enthusiastic early on. And then after, the initial relief of, okay, great, this thing's ending. And then once they decided to pursue, plus we didn't know at the time they were going to pursue charges, which I found out 20, 30 minutes later, pursue it again, I should say. Then I was just like, oh my goodness. So now we got to endure this longer and longer. And I think the Commonwealth's just going to try to push this as far as they can till they can't find a jury. And then basically at some point, this thing's just going to go away. And it probably will never end with a guilty or not guilty verdict, quite honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my reaction to it was, I don't know, it was probably a lot different than most. I had, it was a lot of anticipation, And I think just a lot of stress over those couple of days, and then going into Monday and as it kind of dragged on and they brought Karen in for the last time, I'm like, I don't think we're going to get anything today. I thought this was going to go another full day or another couple days. And it was just so strange. I mean, you couldn't even have timed it. It was like clouds were coming in. It was the weirdest day, Mark. The clouds are coming in. Now you're starting to see lightning. Karen's back in the courthouse. It's starting to rain. I mean, and I was talking to Kelly Reed, and I said, she goes, do you realize that it hasn't rained or snowed the entire time that we've been through this? And here we are. I mean, it's crazy, Mark. It's like the gods were just getting ready to open up the skies. It starts pouring, and then we get the news of the hung jury. And I think for me at that point, so much I put into this the last 10 months, like, thank God I had sunglasses on, because I'll tell you, Mark, it left me, and I just couldn't hold back. And, it was, a little embarrassing, I guess, because I was just lost control, and I
covered for you.
I know, man. I appreciate that, but it's okay. I look at it as, hey, man, it's okay. We're human beings.
Yeah.
When we feel passionate about something and emotional about something, you let go. And I think it all built. And I think I was just happy in the sense of, okay, I'm not happy with the result, of course, but we've got over one hurdle, and maybe we can fight back a little harder. Go ahead, Mark.
Tell you this from a defense attorney standpoint. Anytime a defendant walks out free is some degree of a win.
Yeah.
Now, again, there are wins. Like today, I had a win with a capital W.
Mm-hmm.
What Karen had was a win with a lowercase w. It's not perfect, but let's be honest. Possession is 9/10 of the law, and she went home that night. She hugged her family. Maybe she went out to dinner and, slept in her own bed and all of that. That's a win. The upsetting part is by not being found not guilty, you're not exonerated. There's still going to be the people who are going to say, I think she's guilty. And they're still going to have a slight degree of credibility in that claim because she still has to deal with this. So in that sense, is she still on bail, still can't drive, has to come back to court, potentially face another trial.
Right? 3 weeks, they have a status hearing.
Right. But I mean, that's probably not much, but in theory could be retried. I don't think ultimately that'll happen, but for now they're claiming it will, which you can't dismiss out of hand. So it's not a complete win. But on the other hand, when there's a retrial, that is a huge advantage to the defense. I mean, huge. They know the DA's playbook. They can't adjust their theory of the case. I mean, they can fine tune their case, like maybe eliminate, I don't know, 50 witnesses, please, for the love of God, for all of us. But
Seriously.
they can't change their theory. I mean, they're restricted by the indictment, and the indictment is a vehicular accident, so they're stuck with that. So might they eliminate the murder charge, which frankly they should? If they did that, that would take out all this nonsense evidence about angry about trips in Aruba, angry about other girls and text messages. And I mean, if I were the DA, I would dismiss the case. So I'm the wrong person to analyze this. But assuming somebody in that office has a brain is going to do this, you dismiss the murder count, which is, I think, a bridge too far. It's a little theoretically, it's just too much. I mean, the motive that she intentionally mowed him down, that sounds hokey to me. And you get rid of all that evidence. The defense, of course, is going to come back. They're going to have transcripts of every single witness who testified for the DA. But the biggest advantage they're going to have is time. They're going to have time to study.
Here you go.
Recalibrate, think. And let's be honest, the defense lawyers are really good and they're really smart and they're really skilled. And if you give them time, there are certain issues in particular that they're going to prepare for, which I think in the event that there was a retrial are going to be crushing. And to me, you start with this nonsense inside the Sally port, the video, the car, all of that. If you recall, they learned about that in real time, in live time during the trial. And they did a really good job in reacting kind of on the fly. They exposed it, but they didn't have any time to really think about it and exploit it. And now with the benefit of this time, these guys are going to send subpoenas. They're going to file discovery demands. They're going to file motions. They're going to investigate. They're going to talk to the FBI and the U.S. attorney, who you have to believe is going to help them to the extent that they're willing about these issues and perhaps other issues. And that's going to help them probably solve the riddle of what the hell is the story with this video. And if they solve that, this case is over. I mean, if you have them, if you can name names and name people that are apparating in and out and why that's happening, that's devastating. The other thing, I think, with the benefit of time is you'd have to believe that the feds are going to lift the protective order that limited the parties from speaking to the ARCA witnesses. So, you have to remember when they called those, the crash daddies, I guess is what people call them. I'm not into like the whole, I try to be serious about this. Kind of funny. But they called them cold. They knew what the report said, but they had never spoken to the witnesses. So they were good witnesses, but they weren't prepped at all. You have to think at this point, the feds are going to say, have at it, talk to them, prep them, ask the questions you want, ask specific things. And so you'd have to think that testimony the second time around is going to be much more sophisticated because there's going to be a confidence. They know what they're going to say about every little thing, including they'll probably ask them about all the stuff that Lally asked them about. Oh, what if you saw the taillight and this? And even though those guys said it doesn't mean anything to us because, as Jesse Pinkman famously said, science, Mr. White, science.
Science.
They can still, fine tune that. I have to make a breaking. It's my favorite show of all time. I had to
I love Breaking Bad. Oh my God. Don't get me started on that.
The point is, if there is a retrial, it's such an advantage for the defense if that even happens. But I don't think it's going to happen. But that's a whole nother conversation.
Well, it's funny that you said about time, giving the defense time. And I was just always would laugh where you had maybe like what I called like the star witness, the person that we really want. I think one time was Jen McCabe. I know Proctor was one, but they ended on a Friday. And I'm like, you're going to give that defense team a weekend and have that witness come back and sit for the Commonwealth? Do you know what they're going to do to that witness when they get back up there on Monday? And it was, yes, they were always well prepared anyway, but to stop on a Friday and cut testimony and let the jurors go home at 4 and then give them a whole weekend to retool and go back over that transcript.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, there is such a talent discrepancy between Jackson and Yannetti on one hand and Lally on the other. And I mean, both parties can, I suppose, benefit by time, thinking, rethinking, recalibrating, re-strategizing. But ultimately, you know, talent's going to rise to its level, and any break is just going to be an advantage for the smarter, better lawyers who also, in my view anyway, have the truth on their side. So it's just going to help them. And if there is a retrial, I mean, you know, take this for what it's worth, because I'm stunned that we're even talking about a retrial.
sure.
But I think that the impact of the defense presentation will be even that much more overwhelming at a retrial than you saw it now, which I thought was more than overwhelming.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So obviously, you know, one of the big conversations now, almost immediately after the hung jury gets announced, we have essentially a press release, I think just a few hours later or the next day, Trooper Proctor, State Police Association released statement after embattled Trooper Michael Proctor reassigned. Obviously, I think we all felt this was going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
He's got the reassignment. Do you think, Mark, ultimately, I'll ask you a couple questions here, kind of a loaded question. You think ultimately this guy is just going to get fired? And two, do you feel that there'll be more fallouts now, maybe Buchanan or Tully, do you think they fall behind him in line?
Well, he's definitely getting fired. What you're witnessing now is due process. And even a scumbag like Michael Proctor is entitled to due process. That's the beauty of the American system, whether you like it or not. Everybody's entitled to due process, even dirty, corrupt, misogynist cops like this loser. So, and moreover, don't forget, he's a member of a real powerful union. Police unions are amongst the most powerful unions for collective bargaining that you'll ever see. And that's not a criticism, but the reality is, because their unions are so strong, their collective bargaining agreement about the procedures that they're entitled to before they get terminated, as you might expect, is a hell of a process. So when people are complaining, oh my God, how is this guy not fired? He's going to get fired, but it's a process, and it's going to take a long time. But he's already been stripped of his gun and badge. He's been kicked out of the detectives branch. He's basically going to be in a rubber room somewhere for a period of time. He's going to get more hearings. He's going to be canned, and he's going to be gone. So Proctor is like, garbage in, garbage out. Forget him. He is toast. He's useless to the state police. He can never testify in a case again, including this case. I mean, what are they going to do? Recall him? Probably not. As far as the other guys, they could be subject to discipline. I don't think that they would get terminated, at least for what they've done so far. But Buchanan, I think, is in a lot of trouble. Not so much right now with how the state police look at him, but how he's going to come off in a retrial. Because again, go back to what we talked about 10 minutes ago, where the defense learned about the inverted video in real time and just kind of asked whatever questions they could, but didn't really know. That's all coming back to Buchanan. Okay. And now you're giving Jackson and Yannetti months to sort that out. Okay. And the question is, why did Buchanan and Lally prep this video and not announce that it was inverted? Why did Buchanan switch who was driving and who wasn't? Why did he move all the people around? Why did he say it appeared to be normal and then it was inverted? All these kinds of things. Don't forget also, he's, basically him and Proctor are like frickin' frack, right? They're doing everything together. He's another one. Oh, I saw evidence reveal itself. He also was Proctor's supervisor and was a recipient of some of those grotesque text messages. And in fact, I think liked some of them.
Mm-hmm.
The supervisor, rather than telling him, knock it off. What are you doing? That's not how we behave. He's like, right on, right on, bro. That's funny. He's like a bro, consistent with his like ridiculous video of him dancing with his shirt off and being a loudmouth Neanderthal. And when you saw Buchanan testify the first time, you saw his body language. He was an arrogant dude,
I
leaning
was
on
in there the day he
He's
testified.
kind of leaning on the rail,
Yeah.
and all calm and cool. Watch his body language if he testifies the second time. You're not going to see that. He's going to get destroyed, and I think ultimately he's got a real problem. And I wouldn't be surprised if, not that he's able to tell them I'm not going to testify, but he's going to be real hesitant to do that. So I don't think the state police scandal in this case is purely a Proctor thing. Clearly, Proctor is, the main actor in this, but at a retrial, it's Buchanan, I think, who becomes the critical one, because his testimony was nobody touched the taillight in the Sally Port. Nobody was in the Sally Port. Nobody did anything.
Right.
And you're giving these guys months to get to the bottom of what really happened in the Sally Port. And you may very well have Buchanan and Proctor exposed for perjury. And if that's the case, I don't think that's another reason why there would never be a retrial. It's over.
Do people ever get prosecuted for perjury? I mean, do we ever see that?
If you have a situation where not usually, let's be honest, not usually. I mean, I've represented detectives who were charged for perjury on really nonsense stuff where they're alleged they were drug cops, and they were alleged to have said, I recovered, a bag of drugs, and it was really the partner. I mean, really Mickey Mouse stuff like that. Now that's in New York, so that's different. But if you have state police in this case who have provably lied about planting evidence and lying about exculpatory evidence, then yeah, they'll get prosecuted and they'll go to prison.
What is it? I mean, is a sentence like that, is it always different? I mean, do you get like a year or something like that? Or is it, I mean, can some really major charges come down on you?
Well, it depends who prosecutes you. I mean, if it turns out to be a federal thing, federal sentences actually are in months. Don't ask me why, but they do everything in months.
Interesting.
If it was going to be a state prosecution, they'd have to bring in a special prosecutor. It would not be the Norfolk DA, because they have a conflict. I mean, these guys, it's so incestuous, as you know, that these corrupt cops are literally housed in the DA's office that, in theory should be prosecuting them. So that can't happen. So, I mean, it varies, but if it turns out that there's legitimate evidence of them lying about planting evidence to frame an innocent woman for murder, yeah, you federal or state, you go to prison for that.
Yeah. Maz, quick thoughts on Proctor?
Well, yeah, it makes sense to me what Mark just said, because it's already grounds for firing immediately. But then you have all this union stuff that protects these guys, just like you said. So that makes sense to me. I know a lot of us wanted him out there, and there was a lot of confusion in the language yesterday about everything. It was like I was reading it live on the air 2 days ago. I was reading it live on the air, and I was trying to make sense of it. And I was having trouble doing it on the fly because it almost seemed.
I thought he was fired. I mean, I reported he was fired. And they're like, "You didn't get fired; you got reassigned," and I just got killed for that. It was confusing.
Right. I read the reassignment part or transferred part. I'm like, well, that kind of contradicts it. It sounds like he's still working for him, but basically he's being placed elsewhere. So someone like him, he just needs to go. But I think, like Mark said here, it's I think we always have like expectations where people just go right down into the fire right away and they're out of there. But in the real world with unions and all that stuff, it's a process that they have to go through and everything. But he definitely needs to go. And I don't think enough's being said from the Massachusetts State Police. Never mind the things he said about Karen, but essentially the things that he did that they're not even talking about, like basically being involved in a cover-up and frame job of a factually innocent woman, for example.
Right. No, I agree.
When you work for a public service union, nothing happens with termination quickly. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. They have powerful unions that have more due process than you'll ever receive in your life. And that's just, that's the reality.
Yeah. So now, obviously now we have, all the fallout from the Karen Reed case. Obviously we know what Proctor's status was in that, but now this starts compromising some other cases in this state, especially the Brian Walsh case, which is a huge case here. And I'm sure everybody that's watching this knows about this case. But, look, you got their lawyer filing a motion naming investigator Proctor after the retrial testimony. This was earlier on in his testimony, but now I'm wondering what's going to happen with the fallout. What Mark, what potentially could happen here now that he's dismissed? I mean, could this literally screw up the Walsh case and he walks, or?
I don't know. I mean, that's maybe, but probably not. The reality is you have to know, what did he do in that case, and are there other witnesses?
Google searches.
Well, we'll get to that in a minute, but
Yeah.
are there other witnesses who can testify to what he would? I mean, obviously, as much as you despise the Norfolk DA's office, as corrupt as they appear to be, nobody with half a brain wants this lunatic Walsh, who is, he's entitled to due process too, I should say, who allegedly chopped up his wife and did these terrible things, and it appears to be a monster of a psychopath of the first degree, to go free. I mean, that would be a terrible injustice if he went free, because scumbag Proctor, is a terrible cop. But so the first thing they're going to try to determine is, do we really need him? The concern I would have is, whether you want to call him a case detective or case manager or whatever the word of the day is that the state police have tried to make this sound like, is did he send text messages as well? I mean, if I'm his lawyer, I would be, and I'll tell you why. His testimony against Karen Reed was so ridiculous. If you recall, what he said was, this experienced homicide detective, I mean, he deals with murder cases. That's what you're going.
Yeah.
Okay. He was just, he had PTSD essentially, because a woman ran down, either on purpose or not, another man. And I'm not minimizing what happened to John O'Keefe, even if that were true. But I want to be careful how I say this. But in the world of murder and homicide, as awful as that is, that's not the kind of thing that makes a detective lose their shit.
Right.
Okay. It's not the kind of thing that makes them get so emotionally disturbed that 8 months later, he's still doing these things. So that testimony was ridiculous, but it begs the question, if that bothered him, how about the sick SOB who chopped up his young, beautiful wife into 27 pieces, never to be found, and was Google searching how to chop up a body, how to hide a body, how to make the, I mean, I don't know. That would seem to be upsetting more than this, which by his own logic means, was he sending texts? Was he talking to his buddies? Was he talking to his sister, who he likes to talk about, 6 times a day, what's going on? And as sick as this sounds, the woman in that case, who unfortunately was murdered, is a very, very attractive young lady. I forget her name, but you've seen the pictures. Was he looking for
Walsh?
Was he looking for nudes?
Right.
I don't know.
Anna Walsh.
Ask me, probably.
Yeah.
So they're going to want to know that. They're going to want to cross-examine him about that. But either way, they're going to want to cross-examine him about his conduct, in Karen's case, which is totally fair game. They're going to want to, introduce evidence that he's been sanctioned. He's been essentially defrocked as a detective. I mean, he's basically in the rubber room, as we said. So, yeah, potentially this is troubling for that case. You just don't know if there's another way for them to get around it. But if there's other cops that they use instead of him, is it Buchanan? Probably. That's his kind of supervisor / partner, right? So it's probably all the same characters. And the reality is, I don't know when this case is scheduled to be tried, but if I'm Jackson and Yannetti, I want Walsh to be tried first. I want Turtle Boy to be tried first. I want all this bad stuff to happen and give them even more ammunition to destroy these people down the line. So it's a mess.
Yeah, it's such a mess. All right, let's go on, and I'm going to address the elephant in the room. And I talked about this a little bit with Mark before we came on.
Quite literally.
Literally the elephant in the room.
That appears to be literally an elephant in the room.
Yeah. So I had released a video yesterday, and I talked about, some sources that came forth to me. We'll get into it a little bit, but I just want to remind everybody of the charges. So Reed was charged with second-degree murder motor vehicle manslaughter while driving under the influence and leaving the scene of a collision. So my interpretation of it, and Mark, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. So the murder charge hinges on the intent. So it couldn't. So she could not be acquitted of the charge, potentially convicted on the lesser charges such as manslaughter, which involves no intent, and based on the recklessness or carelessness, carry lighter penalties. These charges are appropriate if you believe she could cause his death, but do not do so intentionally. However, if you find her guilty of murder, then of the more serious charge, lesser charges would not be considered. Do I have that right? Am I wrong?
No, that's correct. I mean, you start with the more serious charge. Murder in this case required intent. If you, in theory, didn't find that, you would go down to the manslaughter, which is recklessness, which is more than negligence, but very, serious. A conscious disregarding of a risk that your conduct could have caused death. In other words, flooring it in reverse. Not that you intended to kill someone, but a normal person would say, Jesus, I could kill someone if I do that. And then, you go down to the next one, which is kind of a negligence, even lesser standard. So no, I think your summary is right. That the crazy part to me, before you even get to the part that you're going to talk about, is all three of the theories have a different kind of elephant in the room, which is a car accident.
Yeah, and that didn't happen.
It seems to me that a sensible jury in starting with the murder case would decide, did she intend to mow him down, is kind of jumping the gun to the first threshold question, which is, before we decide whether she intended to mow him down, did she in fact mow him down?
Right.
And if the determination in the jury room is that, we're not really sure that she mowed him down, well, then it's time to go home, because if that's the case, all three charges fail, because they all require proof that she ran him over, whether her intent is at any level that you described. So I don't understand what they were doing anyway, but that's how they're supposed to deliberate. The way, you would start top down. You would, if you acquit on murder, you should theoretically get to the next one. Normally, if there was a hung jury on all three charges, logically, you would think that means they never got past the murder charge, logically, because or the car accident, and they just said, the hell with this. We don't know. Let's forget intent. We can't even get past anything. If somebody is reporting that they disregarded the murder charge, the first question is, what does that mean, disregarded? Does that mean we don't want to think about it casually, which they shouldn't do? They should decide that first. Or does it mean that 12 out of 12 people said, I don't believe that there was an intent, so do we all agree we're acquitting her on murder? If that's the case, the judge should have been notified, because if the jury in fact came to a decision, 12 out of 12, that she's not guilty of murder, then the judge should not have hung the jury on all three counts. They should have acquitted on murder, hung on the other two counts, and at a potential retrial, the murder would be gone.
Yeah. So it's essentially what happened to me. I put a video out. Listen, I got like a 50-50 split on it. Some people were really happy with the update. Some people were really mad about it. I made an error in Proctor in saying that he had been fired. Again, even Mazza said this too. It was confusing. There was a lot of information that was coming out very fast. So I talked about Proctor. I made a retraction in a statement and said, look, I apologize. He wasn't fired. It seemed to me he was, but come to find out, he was reassigned.
Well, they worded that really sneaky. When they said relieve, listen, let's be honest. When you read a story, I'm not talking about reading the article, but read the headline, and it says, breaking news, Michael Proctor relieved of his duties.
Right.
Most people interpret that as firing. Okay.
Yeah, I thought he got fired.
In sports, when a head coach is relieved of his duties, he's fired.
Right.
That's right.
Right. End of discussion.
Right.
Yeah. So essentially, I had a source close to the Reed camp come forward, gave me some information, and essentially what they said was it was not. They all agreed that it was not guilty on the second degree, and then it was the split on the lesser charges. essentially when Bev sent them back to deliberate the last time, that's where it became more of a bullying. There was a lot of fighting in the room. So my question, Mark, is, could the jury have not understood how to cast the verdict? Were they confused on the verdict slip? Because we heard about the confusion of when Jackson had to go back and have it corrected. And then could possibly in that jury room, the more dominant side essentially just bully everybody to have them give in and let's just go home. Could something like that happen? So.
I mean, the first response would be, I mean, I have no idea what they determined because I wasn't there.
For sure.
But in terms of could they have been confused? Of course. The jury sheet was a mess. There was a whole to-do about it, as you saw, going back and forth over what the jury sheet said. And as you know, there were lawyers, myself, one, Andrea Burkhart was another, as I'm sure you heard, talking about the confusion. And I remember talking to Andrea about this days ago, specifically the concern of what happens if there's kind of a split decision where they want to acquit on one and hang on the others. How do we know? And if you look at the jury sheet, at least the version I saw, it wasn't clear what they're supposed to do. And the concern that I would have is when they came back the first time and said, we're deadlocked, not when the judge gave them the Allen, well, not the Allen. You're not in New York. Stop. The Tui Rodriguez card.
Tui Rodriguez, yeah.
No, you gotta know. Listen, you gotta know your audience. I appreciate that. But
yeah,
the first time when they came back and said, we can't reach a decision, and she just kind of sent them back, she probably at that very moment, because if they come back again, it's going to be deadlocked, and by Massachusetts law, it's over.
Right.
She should have told them right there, go back and decide. And to be clear, you've got to reach. I need to know how you feel on each charge. She's not going to tell them if you hang on this, because you don't want to encourage. You don't want to ever tell a jury you should hang or you could hang, suggesting that's an outcome. But nobody said a word about what to do. And then when they come back, she gives them, the Tui Rodriguez, whatever we're calling it, charge, which, by the way, was really favorable to the defense. That is a hell of a lot stronger than in New York and other places. You can't blame her for that. That was like, I thought would have tilted it to the defense, to be honest with you. And then they come back and they just say, we're hung. And nobody knows what that means. And we all assume, including the judge, including the jury, including the audience, that I guess that means everything. And then you hear these reports that that's not exactly what we meant. And that's a problem, obviously. Now, it's not going to mean anything unless unless it means that the defense, and again, they have the benefit of time. And I know they watch these shows and all that. And any good lawyer will sponge any information they can. How you guys doing? What they may very well do is send an investigator out and attempt to contact jurors. It's not improper when the case is over. And if, God forbid, they spoke to 1, 2, 3, 4 jurors, whatever, who said, I thought we acquitted on, the top count, then they would try to get that in the form of a sworn affidavit. And then you show up in court and you wave that around and say, Judge, we have a serious problem. And at that point, you'd have a real issue. But short of that, the judge is not going to do anything based upon, internet gossip of, jury deliberations are considered sacrosanct and private, and no judge is ever going to try to dig and peel the onion back and say, what the hell is going on inside the jury room, unless there are allegations of misconduct or something improper that includes like sworn affidavits, at which point somebody's saying in the comments, contacting jurors is illegal in
Massachusetts. I just saw that.
Which, by the way, once again, makes me bang my head against the wall. While I understand that jurors...
Uh-oh. Did we lose Mark?
I'll just jump in real quick.
Yeah.
So I was going to say that, one of the things in my mind was that I always felt all along that basically if they acquitted her of their murder charges for second degree, then the final charge, which was the leaving the scene of an accident. I mean, ultimately, if you're going to say that, okay, she's not guilty for manslaughter or second degree murder, then
Everybody saying, Mark, step back into the light. I just had to laugh at that. I just saw it. Sorry,
that's
Maz.
fun. That's fun.
A
That's all
little
good.
comedy here.
Yeah,
Go
that's all
ahead,
good.
Maz. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So you figure if she left, they're going to say she left the scene of an accident. Well, if she didn't commit second degree murder, then there's no scene of an accident or scene of a crime to leave. So therefore, automatically, two of those three charges are, to me, that's basically a sibling to that other charge. Basically,
Right.
if she's not guilty on one, then she's not guilty on the other. It's not guilty on one, then guilty on the other. It's not guilty, not guilty.
Right.
To me, I felt once they got that out of the way, then you're looking at the DUI, and basically it comes
Hey,
down
Mark.
to the DUI. Hey, Mark, and then
Oh,
that's
you
it.
might be frozen again.
Frozen again.
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
that's all right. This
We'll get
happened
him
to him
back.
before in the Young Jerks. He'll get through it.
Yeah.
I'm back.
He'll come back. Yeah. Oh, there you are.
There he is.
I'm back.
Welcome back.
Now-
So, thank God for the Generac. It takes like a 20-second delay. I have no idea why we lost power.
Oh, wow.
But I was saying about, if you can't contact jurors in Massachusetts, well, if there's an allegation of misconduct, how can you prevent the parties, in particular the defense, from exploring that if they're not even allowed to talk to jurors? I got to tell you, the Massachusetts criminal procedure it's awful. So anyway, if they're not allowed to get affidavits from jurors, then short of jurors coming forward, then this issue becomes one that the judge would chalk up to internet gossip, and that would be the end of it.
Yeah, and I want to be I just want to be transparent with everybody too, because when I was talking backstage to Mark and Maz, and I said, look, like I showed him the presentation that I put together. I said, Mark, if you don't agree with me and I'm wrong, set me straight. I'm not a lawyer. Like, just set me straight, And I
have no problem telling people when they're wrong. Believe me.
Yeah.
And again, if you're just reporting what people are telling you, it's fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I know when these reports came out yesterday, like generally, and people said that they were discarding the murder count and then they were hung up on the other things as a legal exercise. It just didn't make sense because the hung jury was awarded to the whole case, not the lower two counts.
Yeah. So again, listen, I don't get everything right either. It was a very credible source that was close to the Reed camp that gave me this information, and I decided to roll with it and go with it. We're never going to really know until someone steps out and says something. The bottom line.
It's very interesting that so far no one 3 days later has found a deliberating juror who's talked. I know there was the one alternate who said not guilty. But I'm shocked. I thought there would have been at least one juror, if for no other reason, just look at me. I'm like, the story today would have at least shared the deliberative process. I mean, that's pretty surprising that they haven't done that.
Hey, I had a question, Mark. Are jurors allowed to read court testimony or transcripts while deliberating, or do they just get to use their notes?
So this was a big thing. Mazza shaking his head. He knows this was another big Massachusetts fiasco. They generally don't generate transcripts during trial, which is absolutely nuts. They don't even generally allow readback. If the jury says, can we hear from this witness again? Can you read back the direct examination of Proctor regarding why he claimed, he sent the text messages? No, we don't do that. That's crazy. They do that for the people that are offended by this. Oh, you always talk about New York. That's what I know. I'm sorry. This happens all the time. And I think it happens anywhere else. And as I've said, if you're making New York look like a modern, effective jurisdiction, you're really bad. So Massachusetts procedure is really bad. So they can't, and they're allowed to use their notes. But the problem is the notes are not evidence either. So they're just supposed to be used to refresh only that particular juror's recollection. So in theory, now again, jurors can do whatever the hell they want. The judge will never know. They want to, whatever they're, there it goes again, whatever they're doing in the deliberation room, they can do. But in theory, they're not even supposed to like argue and compare notes, because you're not supposed to share your notes with anyone else. And it comes down to, well, this is what the witness said because I wrote this. And someone else says, well, I wrote this. And that call for readback. And so
might lose him again, Maz.
Heard the one all about her
comes at the light.
Jesus. Are we back?
You're back.
Yep, you're back now. Yep,
I'm back. You know,
it's the Massachusetts
I got to tell you
lawyer
something.
gods.
This Generac, you
He's
don't want to
using a,
know
internet
what the
blocker
full house
to stop him from talking on the internet because he's telling the truth too much.
Yeah.
This thing better not fail because anyway. So they're not even allowed to share notes, and but also in a case like this, I mean, you guys were both in court, I think, at some point. Could you pay attention or watching on the stream, particularly with the DA? Were there times that you faded? I mean, I had people dragging me for days about, we have pictures of you borderline falling asleep in court, and I do this and I do this for a living. I watch boring testimony all the time, and I'm going to be honest. Lally almost put me to sleep many times.
Yeah, it was brutal. It was really brutal.
There were times that I was falling asleep, and bless his heart, Karen's father kept handing me mints to like stay awake.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, he just Tic Tacs. He likes Tic Tacs, and
oh, it's great.
It keeps you awake.
Tic Tacs, sir.
Yeah, a lot of Tic Tacs that day. But the point is, no, they can't. They don't get a chance to get transcripts, get readback. They're going on memory. It's a 70-something witness trial. It's 2.5 months. And if I said to you there were 75 witnesses, go ahead and name them all. You could probably name 40,
forget it.
Maybe 40, right?
Yeah.
So it's sad. I mean, you have to wonder what they missed. And you think about it, when you look at Lally's summation, I hit him. And what did he say? There were 4 witnesses who said that?
Yeah.
My own recollection is that's not true. I don't remember. It would have been nice to be able to at least have the option to kind of verify that. I don't know. He also said, there was one person's DNA, John O'Keefe's, on his pants. That I know is untrue. I remember 3 distinct, that I just remember. But,
well, didn't they find 2 unnamed sources on his clothes?
Yes.
As well? Like, who's that? Who's that?
but he said 1. I mean, that's just not true.
Right.
And, does that roll over the jury or not? I don't know. But the whole process just feels gross. And it's hard to have a lot of confidence in how the jury decided what they did. And, not for nothing, the notes were very intelligently written. They were very well written, probably by a lawyer. But, if you listen to the substance of the last jury note, it's kind of disturbing, deeply held convictions, whatever the words were. That doesn't sound like evidence. That sounds like bias.
I almost felt like I almost felt like Bev, the last time she sent them back, were kind of chastising the jury. I mean, I don't know if you got that, Mark, but I kind of felt that way. Like it was like kind of like your civic duty to go in that room and get this done for the for the Commonwealth.
I mean, I don't think that was her as much as the charge, but I felt that the note that they sent back, when you're talking about, despite our best efforts, due to our deeply held convictions, what does that mean? That like for example, I have a deeply held conviction. Cops would never lie. But that's not necessarily the evidence in this case. I'm just
Right.
making this up. Deeply held convictions to me does not sound like analyzing a case based on whether there's proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah. No, yeah, because they're just stuck inside. Like, I'm gonna roll with the cops, the Commonwealth, or I'm with Karen Weed and I've already made my decision up, and they're just cementing their feet in the ground.
To me, I don't know how they ever got past the ARCA
I don't
witness.
either. I don't.
To this day, I find that shocking. I think it's kind of sad and terrible, for Karen and her team, because that evidence is just beyond overwhelming, and you could literally, without more, conclude that's reasonable doubt without any of the other stuff. Reasonable because in this case, there's no crime.
Yeah, I mean, we essentially live on this. Yeah, we essentially live on this planet by physics.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit, Mark.
This is just the Yellow Cottage Shales impersonation.
Right here, I'm back.
Mark's gonna take his mask off, and it's gonna be Plevin under there. I got you guys.
It's Plevin.
But I have to, Mark. I have to agree with you. I mean, we essentially live on this planet by physics. I mean, that's what keeps us here, and I just find it hard that they got past it, because when I heard their testimony, that's what. I mean, I said, this is the nail. This is the nail right here. I mean, these guys know what they they design military equipment. They work with the NHL. It's hard to believe that you would not believe those guys.
I mean, to me, I take it back even worse than that. I say, they got those reports. Can you hear me?
Yeah. It's all right, Mark. We'll wait for you.
Let me do the comment from Robert Balboa. There he goes. Mazza's face on every time his Wi-Fi goes.
Am I back?
You're back.
Right. I was going to say, once the DA got those ARCA reports, I would suggest that the prosecution itself was unethical, meaning you don't even have probable cause at that point to believe that she committed a crime, let alone proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah. It's just insane. I mean, to even get to the point that we were, and to put Karen all through this. And again, like I said, the ARCA guys really, I just don't see. I mean, even people that I know weren't even really watching the case that much and might have caught some of their testimony, they're like, oh, those guys know what they're talking about. And just to go back and compare, the ARCA guys to Trooper Paul is just, it's like, it's like kindergarten versus, the highest degree. Yeah.
I do think that they missed one opportunity with the ARCA guys, because they were so adamant that, again, the physics doesn't lie, the science doesn't lie. And when they basically establish that the damage to John O'Keefe's body and the car makes no sense, and the taillight could not shatter in that way, but you're staring at 45 pieces of broken taillight.
Yeah.
And these guys are telling you, not from this, you're not. And to me, that if you lead with that, it's a perfect segue to, well, how the hell did the taillight get there? Which leads to Proctor. And you say, is he the kind of guy that would plant taillight? Well, I don't know. Let's go to the text messages.
Yeah.
And it just all, and the solo cups and all that. And so to me, I was a little bit surprised they didn't lead with the ARCA as a way to say, look, she didn't do it, okay? But let's now talk about the evidence that they claim did and how it got there. And that leads into the butt dials, the weird phone calls, the weird behavior of the 34 people. And then at that point, I mean, I think they're off and running.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, it's crazy. Crazy. I can't believe I just sit here and go, I can't believe we got to this point. Did you see John? Go ahead, Maz. What were you gonna say?
No, I agree. I felt confident in the not guilty verdict. I actually had a troll come after me today and said you were wrong about the not guilty. I felt like saying to the guy, you're right. I mean, I was wrong. I mean,
we were all wrong.
Yeah,
I mean, what that proves, it's a jury. We're not in the jury room. We don't know. Right. We just have opinions. I mean, it's
right.
Don't you feel like the jury though was kind of almost it was selected right before the trial, but don't you feel like it was kind of selected throughout the trial? Because the day you were there, Mark, all hell broke loose. I was thinking about this today. I'm like, I was recalling the day you were there, which was the day after I was there. And that morning, 2 or 3 hours or whatever it
they
was, all
shut the
hell broke
stream
loose.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just
By the
seems like
way, they shut the stream down because I think he's the court TV guy who runs the camera, and they all use his feed, or whoever the camera guy was. Nobody told him that they were bringing in a juror, so it wasn't his fault. And
right.
Obviously that day I didn't see the live stream because I was watching with my own eyes, but I'm aware that they caught that juror on recording, and she lost her mind. Okay. And was, oh my God, there was a juror on video, as if it's the guy's fault. It was not. You should have told him there's a juror coming. And then she basically says, that's it. No live stream for the rest of the morning, where she's like the nun with the ruler whacking someone's wrist.
Yeah.
And after the punishment was meted out, okay, fine, you can bring it back. There was no method to the madness of doing it. But yeah, when they got rid of the juror, they had 3 jurors come back and forth that day. And they were trying to get rid of jurors. And, there was even some suggestion by some of the trolls or whatever you want to call them, who were implying that people, whether it was myself or someone else, was doing something and telling people what's going on that could otherwise make the jury more subject to being dismissed. And I mean, these are all nonsense lies. And, someone even asked, the judge was aware of who we were. Me and Melanie were there. And, who are these prominent, I think she called us prominent media members.
Yeah.
Like, let me tell you something. I'm a lawyer. I'm a practicing lawyer. I'm not, I appreciate the compliment. So you think, and we're just like, what are you talking about? We're just sitting here watching, and it was all nonsense. And, we can talk about this now because it's over, but strange things were happening with trying to get rid of jurors. There's no question.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, because that's what I mean, that other juror that they got rid of, the one that apparently didn't like Karen laughing, wasn't this someone actually that was kind of favorable towards Karen and probably being a not guilty? And wasn't this something she actually did a month before, actually? I heard a story about this, that apparently they bagged her on that a month earlier, and then they just let her go 30 more days. It just seemed like they were poaching them and just taking out specific jurors that would have got that 12 to be unanimous.
Yeah, I heard 3 pro Karen Reed jurors got dismissed. I saw some reports. By the way, Kelly Reed is in the chat, so say hi to Kelly, everybody. Thanks for joining, Kelly. It's good to see you here. And yeah, I heard 3 pro Karen Reed jurors got dismissed. I mean, I could be wrong on those reports.
No, I don't know. I mean,
I think that's right, because I think
hesitant to classify them because you never know. I mean, you just don't know. But I did hear something, how somebody, and again, I could be conflating stories with the day I was there and later, because who knows. But somebody was apparently complaining that they thought that Karen was looking at her parents and smiling, and whether that's true or not, you're on trial for murder. You believe you're being wrongfully prosecuted. Your parents are there to support you. Who better than your parents to look to for support? And if your biggest complaint is that the defendant is looking for comfort in her parents, my response is get a life, if that bothers you.
I agree.
Yeah,
100%.
I agree. All right, let's do this. I actually asked my audience. I kind of asked them to say, look, I'm going to have Mark on. Are there any questions that you'd like to go through? And maybe we can, we'll pull some of those up and have Mark kind of rapid fire through. Maz, feel free to jump in at any point if you have any points that you want to get in there. Let me just do this, because I know if I don't do it, I'm going to get yelled at. I'm going to be honest with everybody. I'm not going to be able to read all the questions that came through, but I want to at least recognize some of the super chats that came in. So I'm going to kind of rapid fire through this so it doesn't bog down the show. But I do appreciate all of the stuff that came in. Let's see. Justice, thank you so much for the 10. She says, thank you for your continuous coverage. Bring on what the Commonwealth thinks they have to keep this going. We ain't got no quit. Love that. Shelby, thank you for being a 4-month member. She says it's not over yet. We still have a lot of work to do, and I agree. Let's see. Thunder Road Queen, thanks for the 10. Why is this so hard to charge for perjury? I think Mark answered that already. But thank you so much for the 10. Sunshine, thanks for the 10. Let's see. Military base. Higgins dumped the bloody clothes. Did he change clothes that night? Could he have dumped the dog carcass? Chloe. A lot of stuff that I think that we've all gone over in the past, but we appreciate the 10. Vicious, $5. Could previously impounded phone records be allowed in the next trial? Mark.
You know, this is another one of these weird Massachusetts things. I mean, the fact that they have a specific rule of criminal procedure about judicial approval to get phone records and whatnot, you know, in New York, you just subpoena them and they go to court and the judge looks at them and either gives them to you or it doesn't. And and half the times the phone company just sends them to you, even though they're not supposed to. And you notify the court and they say, okay, thanks for letting me know, whatever. You know, my understanding, and this was a little before I started watching the case, was that the judge was not allowing a lot of these 34 Fairview phone records to be disclosed to the defense. And in light of the defense, in light of the evidence that's come out, I mean,
Is that Chloe?
That's Winnie, actually. That's the yellow lab. Probably barking at the dark, you know.
Chloe's been rehomed in March.
Yeah. Oh no, that's definitely not Chloe. But
You and
and she's not allowing, you know, them to get phone records. You'd have to think that they would revisit that or just get them from the feds like they did this time. So either way, I think they would get what they need.
Nico, thank you so much. I appreciate the 5. Scott, awesome. Thank you so much. The 10 gifted memberships. I appreciate it. Love spending all the time that we spent together outside in front of the courthouse. You're such a stand-up guy and such a gentleman. And I always love our conversations together. Koozie, thanks. Does any of you guys watch the Paul O'Keefe? I got about a 5-minute clip. We are going to watch a little bit of that. We'll do that next before we get into rapid fire. Jen, thank you for the 5. Says like all of you, but have to leave. Can't stand O'Keefe hatred in the chat. No problem. It's okay. Little Irish girl, thanks for the 2-month membership. Robin, thank you for the 3 months. You can go over the top NG verdict you spoke about. We did that already. Let's see. Robin, thank you. Oh, so I got that. Little low lady, thanks for the $2. Said no, why mention a frostbite or blood on the ground? Go ahead.
You know what? They had a medical examiner, meaning the defense, and you'd have to think that they asked them that. I mean, privately, not on the stand. And perhaps they got inconclusive information or nothing substantive. I don't think it's the kind of thing they forgot. Doctors are doctors. They know things. And I'm speculating that they were told it doesn't mean anything and they just left it alone. That's a guess, but I mean, there's no reason not to address it if there was an advantage to do so. And again, these are real lawyers. They don't just forget to do something like that.
Melissa, $5. Wonder if the defense is adamant. Let's see, adamant Karen Reed frame because there's even more info than 3,000-page report than just ARCA. Great panel.
You know, somebody said something similar earlier. I saw online that suggested, you know, they were holding back for a second trial. I'm going to come out and say that strikes me as ridiculous. If they had the ammunition to kill this, they're not hoping for a second trial and holding back. They are looking to kill if they could. So now, I don't know what the feds gave them. Maybe they'll give them more. I suspect they will. And if it's going to be helpful, that's great. But I don't think these guys held back for a second trial. That makes no sense to me at all.
Lily says, Mark, do cops or federal agents essentially have to give their DNA as a condition of their employment?
Well, they might, but that doesn't mean you can just use it for any purpose that you want. You know, it's not real life is not a George Orwell novel where you can just grab DNA and test it anywhere. You know, they give elimination samples all the time. But even in that case, that DNA can only be used for that purpose. It can't be put in what they call the CODIS database that would run against unsolved crimes. Just because you're a police officer doesn't mean that you become a possible suspect in every unsolved genetic crime in America. So it's a little more complicated than that.
Let's see. Janet, $5 says, Mark, if the rumor is true that Jackson Little won't be back for round 2, would you be up there on the second chair with Yannetti? It would be awesome.
I expect that they'll be back, but you know, who wouldn't want to sit on a case like that?
I'm
But
going to be honest with you, just my opinion, and I'd love to hear Maz on this too, but he's probably going to agree with me. This is a huge case for Alan Jackson. I mean, it's a huge case. I don't see him walking away until this is absolutely 1000% completed, to have this on his resume that he cleared Karen Reed of absolute trash, corruption. I mean, you name it here in Massachusetts. He wants
100%.
this win. And, this is, and I don't want to discount any of the other attorneys as well, because they've done a fine job. And can you imagine even though David Yannetti is amazing in Massachusetts, I mean, and now I'm getting tripped up on the case, the James case. Do I have that right? What did he prosecute? The young boy there. And I'm sorry, I'm losing it now, but my brain just froze. And maybe the chat can help me out here. But I totally just lost but anyway, it would raise his status, so much more too. And they're not going to want to. What's that, Maz?
James Curley.
Thank you, Curley. James Curley. That's something that they're going to want to go all the way with this.
These guys are both A+ attorneys,
and I appreciate that.
If you think that, especially somebody who comes from out of town, like Alan Jackson did, to win this case and expose corruption and all of that, the idea that he would walk away with a hung jury, it's not going to happen. Now, again, I don't know what kind of arrangements they have, but the guy is a fighter and like a pit bull. And as a lawyer, when the juices get flowing, you don't want to walk away from that fight. And although they got a good result, it's not a perfect result. And if you think that that's not eating at him, of course it is. And he wants to come back and kill.
Right.
If these guys need someone to hold their bag, I'm no egos. I'm here to do that for sure. But they're not leaving. There's no way they're leaving. They're going to see this through, exonerate her, and both of them, all three of them. They're as somebody said, they're not going anywhere.
Yeah, whack job. $10 says, seems like the Commonwealth strategy is to steal defense thunder by calling all the witnesses worked. In the retrial, does the defense call witnesses even if the Commonwealth already did? Well, I can tell you, I don't think the Commonwealth would call Proctor, correct? The defense would probably have to call him.
Probably. I don't think in a retrial that they go all in on trying to solve the crime. I think what they do is say, again, start with the ARCA. She didn't do it. That's the operating premise. She didn't do it. There's broken taillight. So somebody planted evidence. It comes down to Proctor. Proctor said, I'm protecting Brian Albert in his text messages. They go to the homeowners and the people in the house. They're all they're acting weirdly. But I think at a retrial, they say, we don't know what they did. We're not going to sit here and buy a bridge too far that we can't support.
Right.
But they're doing weird things. They're covering up something. Innocent people don't do that. And I think also they don't need to say it was in the house. And you know what else you're doing? Now you're stopping all this Guarino nonsense about he never went in the house.
Yeah.
It might have bitten off a little more than they needed. And they can still argue that if it wasn't Karen, right, because the science says so, and Proctor planted evidence because that appears to be what happened. And Proctor was saying Brian Albert is, he's okay. That appears to be what happened. And all the Alberts and McCabe's are doing weird things. You can still suggest that they did it without maybe over arguing and giving the DA a lifeline about, you're in the house. It had to be Colin. It had to be that. In hindsight, that might have been too much.
I thought this was a good one, and I apologize. I'm not going to get to everybody's question. I have actually a lot of questions that were pulled this evening. But John says, Mark, would it be possible to bring in an FBI agent to lay foundation for the ARC? It's probably the ARCer and the doctors that were used.
Probably not in the sense if it's to establish that we hired them. because of the prejudice that the FBI knew. But what I would look out for at a retrial, because remember, I think the FBI, well, the U.S. attorney, really, they control everything. But I think they're going to bend over backwards to help if they can. And what I would expect at a retrial is that they're going to get the FBI cell phone guy and bolster Richard Green, was that his name? The defense expert?
Yes.
Who, was good, but not great. I'm being honest. He was a little wishy-washy, but we know just based on common sense that the FBI is solid in agreeing with the defense that Jennifer McCabe did the Google search at 227. I wouldn't be shocked if this time around, Joe Blow from the FBI comes in and says, let me tell you exactly why we know that's the case. And that would be very powerful.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Huge.
Yep.
Sarah H, thanks for the 20. She says, just want to tell Attorney Bederow that I respect him tremendously and listen to him. And it makes me want to go to law school. That's awesome.
Totally.
We also love LTL and Mazza. Yeah, I agree.
Totally.
Check out the prices to go to law school. I was looking at a law school today. It's like $59,000 a year, $29,000 a semester or something. I'm like, well,
which school?
I think it was New England Law.
Oh, that you could have Professor Wendy Murphy.
Oh, jeez. Oh, forget that then.
If they're charging that much, then don't
waste your time.
Yeah.
I'll consult you before I make any decisions.
Yeah. You don't want to be going there.
The law. Okay.
B Sunny 10 says, how do they get Proctor's phone before he was warned, like Brian's?
I don't think he was aware, and the FBI just, Proctor's on a private phone talking to his buddies, and he's a dope, and they got him. And the fact that according to Lally, well, it's not like he was admitting he was framing anyone. If they think that's compelling, then good luck. That's ridiculous. So they got his phone because he's a dope and he was careless.
Sarah $10 says, if Bev told the jury not to speak to anyone, is that legal? Thanks.
Well, I think she could tell them you're not obligated to, but if the press gets them, it's a free country. They have a First Amendment right to speak.
Dave B, $2. Perspectives on what happened to John O'Keefe. We've been through a lot of this.
No clue.
Yeah, we really don't know. I mean, I think we can only speculate. I have my theory. I think Mark has his, Mazza has his. It would just take us forever to go through it.
My only theory is he didn't get hit by a car.
He didn't get by a car.
What they tell me, which means I don't understand why somebody's being prosecuted for hitting him with a car.
Yeah.
He was more likely to get attacked by Godzilla than he was getting hit by a vehicle.
Yeah.
To be honest. Seriously.
Yeah. Let's see. K, $20. I've just been wondering if these cops are involved in a bigger crime ring. And sorry, that bothers. If that brother is involved, why do they go so far to do this to Karen? Could the feds be investigating that? It's a good question.
Who's the brother? I'm just brain farting on what we're talking about.
Could it be John's brother? Paul? Maybe that's what they're saying.
Oh, I don't think Paul's involved in anything. I mean, there's no evidence that he did anything wrong other than, show up in court. And I don't know. I would never accuse him of being involved in something.
Kevin Albert, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, maybe. Yeah. That could be it too. An Albert brother. Just thinking back to Bev asking, what if they don't call Proctor? Was she trying to save hint to Lally in some way?
I don't see. This is one of those things where I'm not a big fan of the judge, but you have to know how legal procedure works, and not everything she does is wrong. What she was basically saying is there's a general principle of evidence law that you can't impeach your own witness. You can't call a witness with the express purpose of clubbing them over the head. It's a kind of a stupid rule unless they're a hostile witness. Okay. And so what she was saying is, well, if they don't call Proctor and how are you going to get this in? And then I think she said, well, what if we call him? And then she's saying, well, you can't impeach your own witness. So how are you going to do that? I don't think that was anything other than a legal discussion. To be honest with you, I don't think that was anything other than that.
Nico says Lally's opening and closing were so different and he lied. Can he get in trouble?
I think he said some things in his summation that were, inappropriate, but in terms of going after Lally, which I'm not saying anything would happen, but I would be more concerned about the whole fiasco with the inverted video and offering that as legitimate evidence. That was unethical for sure.
Everybody's commenting right now. I see the chat, and they said that Paul's new addition here looks very nice on the back of the house. So, all right, let's play through some of this. It's not the full 20-minute interview. I have the link for that if everybody wants to go through that. I don't want to bog down time to go through a 20-minute interview, but I'll drop that extended interview in the chat, so the link is there. We'll opine a little bit here on this 4-minute segment, and
I really didn't like
the corner victim is in this. It's not her.
What's that, Mark?
I did watch this video, the whole thing, and before you play it, I thought Paul was, whatever. I don't think some of the things he said, I think were a little cringe, but the reporter is so biased. This interview, those people in pink that she said, and there's other telltale signs. I'm stunned because this is really bad journalism. Her bias is dripping in this process.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Tonight, a WBZ exclusive. John O'Keefe's brother talks with WBZ about the mistrial, what his family has endured, and what comes next. Paul O'Keefe was in court every single day before the trial ended in a hung jury. Thanks for being with us tonight. I'm Lisa Hughes.
I'm Courtney Cole. David is off. He says what's been lost in all of this is who his brother was. WBZ's Christina Rex is live at the courthouse in Dedham tonight. And Christina, this is the first time we've heard at length from anyone in the O'Keefe family.
It is, Lisa and Courtney. And Paul O'Keefe tells me his family has chosen to stay private over the course of the last 2.5 years. And he believes that privacy, in part, contributed to the environment outside of this courthouse because people in the public, he says, were hearing only one side of the story. Well, tonight, he's sharing more about who his brother John was and what he believes happened back in 2022.
It's been a long, painful 2.5 years.
How are your parents?
They're doing all right. Yeah, they're living in my brother's house in Canton, raising my niece and nephew.
From all that you've learned over the last 2.5 years, like what you think happened that night?
Oh, we know what happened. We know that Johnny and Karen were arguing. It was kind of towards the end of their relationship. Things weren't well.
I'm going to stop this right here. Where in his testimony in the very beginning that he kind of expunged on that, I mean, he talked about that their relationship was nothing out of the normal, that he was good to the kids. Karen was good to the kids.
Right.
He never really argued and said that she was an awful person to anybody in and around the family. I find that odd now that he's saying this now, and he had the opportunity to do that under oath. Did anybody, maybe pick up on that in this interview? I'll ask you all.
I mean, it's an interview, after the trial. They're obviously on a little bit of a PR offensive. It's not surprising. It is a little different. That's Winnie barking, not Lola. They're doing fireworks out by our house, and Lola's just
happening next door too.
Scared, and that's what I do on July 4th. By the way, I stay home with the dogs because they get. I'm that guy. I stay home with the dogs. But anyway.
Maz, you wanted to...
I didn't really pick up on it until you said it, but now just say it, I definitely recognize that. It seems like this is more of like an offensive, a little bit more of an aggressive now. We haven't talked to the media in 2.5 years, but now let's do it. Let's kind of say negative things about Karen. There was a lot of things he said there that had me rolling my eyes, quite honestly.
All right,
raising my niece and nephew.
From all that you've learned over the last 2.5 years, like what you think happened that night?
Oh, we know what happened. We know that Johnny and Karen were arguing. It was kind of towards the end of their relationship. Things weren't well.
Oh, there you go. There's the dog. Look at that.
They were
She's scared.
Oh, no.
It's okay.
Beautiful dog, by the way, Mark.
Yeah.
Beautiful dog.
The other one's parking at the fireworks. This one's scared.
Wow. Beautiful dog.
And put the car in reverse and ran him down and left him there to die. And we figured it out as soon as she left the house that day when she came over. We didn't talk to any investigators, state police, Nobody. My mother had said, do you think she has something to do with this? And I said, we're not going to think like that. Went outside to the driveway to look at her car, and her car was gone. Then my wife spoke to her on the phone on their way back to Dighton. She told my wife that just have to remember the bad times. And I don't think I'm ever going to talk to you guys again. Why would somebody say that? Why would someone say, if you didn't do anything, why would you say you're never going to talk to us again?
But again, you have that opportunity. You had that opportunity to tell this under oath. That's what I'm saying about this. Like, why didn't you say these things under oath?
When did the whole narrative of her version of events become known to you?
Well, if you remember her first arraignment in Stoughton District Court,
Yeah.
Her attorney, David Unetti, had said this is a tragic accident. Fast forward to, I guess, when Alan Jackson came on board.
For just a
lot of
second?
the public was
Go ahead.
I want to get something out there. He said, yeah, it was a tragic accident, because at the time, I don't think even David Unetti knew that there was any, and probably maybe even Karen knew if there was anything at that point that was so out of the ordinary that, well, something happened. It appears to be a tragic accident. He's dead. They probably really hadn't had the time at that point to even look over this stuff and come back and say otherwise. So what he's saying there is just taken out of context.
Yeah, that's been exploited throughout this process. I've thought that, it's kind of ambiguous about, it's could have been an accident with someone else. He's being told that they're claiming, that he was run over. This idea that people are pouncing on the fact that she confessed to Unetti and he gave it away. That's like way too much based on what he said. He didn't do anything wrong there.
Cheryl says tonight's show is better than the fireworks. Thank you. I want to go back up. Olivia was saying something here, and I saw her comment. Okay, girl. See if I can find it. I don't think I can find it. I might have went way past it. Yeah, I don't see it. All right, we'll keep playing.
Informed, because they were only getting one side of the story. And, we didn't come out and tell our side of the story or, what we thought or knew happened. We've kept a low profile and have been silent through this whole ordeal. Now it's time. Now it's time for people to understand the truth.
You think she knows what she did?
She knows exactly what she did. And she's trying to buy and lie her way out of this, refusing to take accountability for her actions.
How have they treated you guys over the course of the last year and a half?
Yelling, screaming, calling us names. I to this day, I don't know what I did wrong.
Doesn't it feel sometimes like your brother's forgotten in all of this?
Absolutely. All the time. It's turned into the Karen Reed show. She walks through a crowd that cheers her on. She goes out in public, takes pictures, signs autographs. She's just living her life like nothing's ever happened. And meanwhile, my brother's been gone for almost 2.5 years.
Mm-hmm. What do you want people to know about John?
Generous, loyal, good-hearted guy who didn't deserve any of this. Has created a void in our life that was already an enormous void, but just made it even that much bigger. And I just want people to remember him and want him to get the justice he deserves and that we deserve. Mm-hmm. And that's Karen Reed doing prison.
Listen, I just have to say, I feel sorry in the sense, obviously it's horrible what happened. It's horrible what happened, but Karen Reed's vehicle did not strike John O'Keefe, nor did John O'Keefe strike Karen Reed's vehicle. I mean, we've used physics and evidence that doesn't line up with any of that. And I just feel bad. I don't know if I feel bad. I just feel something inside me is like, you're really going to keep rolling with these people, the McAlbert, like you're going to roll with that theory. And literally they're showing you in court that it's not possible that this happened. And it's just, I guess when people get their foot cemented in something and they're convicted convinced that that's going to be the way it is, you're just not.
They've been told this narrative for 2.5 years, every day, and they want to believe it because it's easier to deal with it.
Right.
If you have a villain and you solve the crime, then if it even is a crime, then not solve it. It just becomes easier. And to be honest, I've seen people like him in many, many cases where family members of murder victims or homicide victims or even unknown death victims, they just believe what they believe. They are oftentimes completely irrational. And usually the way lawyers look at it is you just kind of shrug your shoulders and say, that's what they've been told. And someday maybe they'll come around, but some days they may not. And I'd love to tell you that the way he thinks is unique. It's not. It sometimes they do, but it's much easier to believe the narrative they've been told and look at her. And she does have support. There are a million supporters out there. She is popular. The case is more about her than John O'Keefe. I mean, in some sense, that's true that everybody talks about her, and it's probably infuriating because it doesn't fit with the narrative that they've been sold. So they justify it by saying justice for John O'Keefe is Karen Read going to prison, when the reality is if she's not guilty, then sending her to prison is the exact opposite of justice for John O'Keefe. But a lot of these families, they have to believe what they've been told because they can't cope with it otherwise.
It's crazy. Maz, any comment?
Yeah, just listening to that earlier today kind of really rubbed me the wrong way. I was reacting obviously a little bit while watching that, and it's just this try to villainize Karen at all costs. It goes back to the science of it all, like you said. I drove by 34 Fairview just a couple weeks ago. I think on the 25th when I was out there, before I went to the select board, I went out there and did a quick little tour. What amazed me is I actually found my way to the house without even using my GPS because I've just studied the town so much. I just knew my way around. But there's a curve in that street.
Yeah.
And it's almost impossible. Here's the thing. If she had backed up into him, the vehicle would have ended up on the grass by about 5 to 10 feet, and he would have been completely run over in order to achieve that kind of a hit, because it just arches. And when you're coming up from the right side of the house, going past the left side of the house, you can see the road curve. When you come back, it's the same way. There's no way. It's not like Back to the Future. Here's my movie reference. And you get a road that's straight ahead where you can get 88 miles per hour. Okay. In this particular situation, you can't even go in reverse in 24 miles an hour and achieve that kind of hit. And beyond all that, it just amazes me how, this is why some people are a little impatient with the family and hate to be a little curt and rude with them because he made some comment. It wasn't in this particular clip. I think the one you played was the 5 o'clock version. The 6 o'clock version had an extra segment. And it was very like an extra 30 seconds. And basically he alluded that Karen was looking at him and smirking at him and his wife. I don't think that's true. But if she did look at them and smirk, I'd imagine that she was doing that because Karen has showcased throughout the trial that typically when evidence is presented by her defense team that proves her right and proves that she's been falsely incriminated for certain things she's been accused of, she feels really like that's a moment for her to say, this is what I've been saying. I haven't done it. All the things you've been accusing me of are total BS. And I think Karen has just a moment there. So I never saw Karen ever look over at them, and she probably was just looking at David Yeti anyways, and he was misconstruing that anyway. So it's just their logic on this is just I don't even want to I don't even feel like apologizing for it anymore, because you know why? John O'Keefe is dead, but Karen Read is being blamed for his death, and she didn't even do it. So, like I said, this was an attack on John, and it's also an attack on Karen to this day. They were both attacked. One was murdered, and one's being put on, at risk of going to prison. On trial.
Look, anytime the family talks in any case like this, I just give them a wide berth, shrug your shoulders. They're upset. They lost a loved one. Oftentimes they're delusional, but I don't pay it any more attention. I don't think it's worth getting upset about because they're going through something that we can't comprehend. And a lot of times they're wrong, and it can appear offensive. And I guess in some level it is when he was saying she's looking at me when clearly she wasn't. Yes, for weeks he was staring at her. We all saw it in the courtroom, but I mean, to me, you just shrug your shoulders and say their loved one was murdered.
Yeah.
Give them a wide berth, shrug your shoulders, and move on. It's not worth it.
And that's the way it was portrayed up in here, in the media up here. I mean, I have a collection of Boston Heralds that I was picking up, and a lot of the front pages, they were putting pictures of Karen, especially when the moments that, they feel something might be going their way at the defense table, and she's smiling, and they're taking that picture and they're putting them side by side, the O'Keeffes, and they're literally running headlines like, Karen Reed smiling, O'Keefe family, and shit like that. Just to kind of pull away from this a little bit, and before I lose my thought here with the ARCA guys, Mark, why don't you think, it's funny because I went to their YouTube page, and ARCA is about reconstruction and showing videos. Why do you think that they didn't use anything like that? I thought we were going to get that. I thought that the ARCA guys are going to get up and this is the reconstruction, and we're going to show you that it does not essentially make any sense.
I think the answer is they were not allowed to talk to them and prep them, and they had no ability to do it. And I think what's going to happen, again, you give real lawyers time. Time is such an advantage to real lawyers like Jackson and Yannetti, and they most likely will get the protective order lifted. They will talk to the ARCA guys, and they will do it the way that you're describing, and we'll all be like, why are we here? But they couldn't even prep these guys. So there's no way, I think there was no mechanism to do it because they met them the day they testified. So another reason why ultimately there's probably not going to be a retrial, because these witnesses are going to be that much worse. And in fact, if the DA can't get a real witness, and I mean real witness, not a Trooper Paul clown show, if they can't get a real engineer or kinetics or whatever the right expertise is to deal with all of these guys, if they can't get a witness who's going to say the ARCA guys are not credible, they're wrong, then I can't see any way, shape, or form that the DA can retry this case. And the reality is they're not going to get a witness who's going to say the ARCA guys are wrong, because they're all going to be trained in physics like them and say they're right.
And it's amazing, though, how the Commonwealth gets allowed to have their expert get up there and show videos, this crash reconstruction, but you don't give that's bias. You don't give, and just what we talk about, the ARCA guys were not allowed to get up there and give any presentation or even just, anything. They weren't allowed. They were just only allowed to verbally give verbal testimony. And if that's, I just don't know why Alan Jackson didn't argue or argue more for it.
I think they were restricted by the Fed's protective
crazy
order, which again was, we're not going to let either side, we're going to release this information, but not let you talk to them. But I would expect the Feds to say, yeah, that was a mistake. Let them have at it and really do it the right way.
Yeah. So earlier today, I kind of put it out there. Obviously, everybody knew you were coming on, and I wanted to give the audience an opportunity just to throw some questions out to you. And I kind of handpicked, and I said I'm not going to get to all of them, but maybe we can do a little rapid fire here if you don't mind. And Maz, again, just chime in if you want, please. So obviously, we already talked about the opinion and results. Were you surprised? We talked about that. We talked about Mark's big win. So we had a question from Paula. Do you think that the so-called firing of Proctor indicated that there will be a retrial in this case? I think we've covered that. Let's see. Deb, thoughts about the news of the third pro? We've talked about that. I think we answered probably a lot of these. Again, Commonwealth, the case. Okay, how about this? So Lisa, can the defense request a new judge, Mark?
They tried and they were denied. They tried to argue that she had an appearance of a conflict. That ruling is not going to be revisited, and they're not going to argue that this judge did anything in this trial that enables them to get a new judge. I mean, she certainly was not particularly friendly to them. It appears, just as an observer, that her and Jackson and Yannetti don't get along personally, but that happens all the time too. There are good judges that you like and judges that you don't. No, I think they're going to be stuck with her. Unless she decides to walk away, they're going to be stuck with her, assuming there's a retrial.
All right, the $1,000,000 question. Everybody just keeps asking this over and over and over again. So Liz asked the question, what do you think the odds the feds will finally step in before maybe this retrial, if we have it? Can that even happen?
Well, not step in the way that they show up and say, we're here to announce that this case is over. They can affect the likelihood of another trial in many ways. They can dump more documents that could be devastating to the DA's case. They could provide the defense more access, as we talked about, to a federal cell phone guy that we talked about, or make the ARCA guys lift that protective order. They can, in theory, if there's movement on their investigation and they arrest people, which I have no idea, that could certainly have an impact. So do I think that that's possible? Yeah. I mean, I don't know that it will, but I mean, look, the U.S. attorney is on record, I think, already saying in good conscience, I can't let this go forward.
Yeah, it's great.
Well, that was the first time. And, in theory, she, quote unquote, almost got convicted, maybe because it was a mistrial on a hung jury. Why would their opinion change? If anything, it's going to be even stronger, right? So I would think they would give them more evidence unless, they felt it was going to be giving away sources and methods and confidential information. I would think anything short of that, they're going to dump on the defense and going to go out of their way to help the defense end this fiasco.
As they should, they should.
Yeah.
As they should. Heather asks, I like this question. Can any of the witnesses be held accountable for changing their testimony from their previous testimonies?
They get cross-examined again and they get grilled on it and get exposed. I mean, many of these witnesses were inconsistent. McCabe is a perfect example where you heard her say, I think she hit him 12 times. Was that the cross-examination?
All
and
times.
Then she claimed at all times, no, but I swear to God, she said, I hit him. I assume at a retrial,
your exact answer was yes. I think your answer was yes, maybe. I don't know. Can you re-ask that question again? I just want to make sure I understand. I think that's how she answered the question.
Yeah, and I think she'll get confronted with her, constantly evolving story, as will, people like Higgins, Brian Albert, and others. So, yeah, I mean, one of the advantages of a retrial for the defense is they're going to get 60-something transcripts of prosecution witnesses.
Wow. Heather, again, I think I like this question too. She says, I would love to know what Mark thinks about the lividity on Officer John O'Keefe's side of his body.
I mean, lividity is just kind of gravity, right? So if he had, one part of his body looked kind of like almost bruised or all red more than the other, that's just the blood going, down.
Side, right.
I mean, it's literally gravity. So that would just suggest that he was positioned at some point after death in whatever that right time period is for this to happen like that. I wouldn't read too much into that.
We've already covered the Walsh question, so we don't have to go over that. Oh, it's a good one. Civil lawsuits. Karen Reed, civil lawsuits. When and if can they happen?
No time soon, not without a determination of the criminal case. I mean, right now, there's been no finding or any suggestion that anybody did anything wrong. So, I mean, she's not filing lawsuits unless she's convicted or the case gets dismissed.
So she's technically, Mark, still under the same charges right now, right? And she's just free until whatever,
Okay. She's out on bail, charged with murder, as awful as that sounds. Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, here's a good one. What's something that I put this in there. What's something that you think the defense could focus on a bit more that maybe they didn't do on the first time?
The condition of the
tail.
Tell
them they're probably watching. So,
the condition of the taillight prior to Proctor getting it. The DA felt compelled to call the Dighton cop, probably because they were afraid of the defense doing that. They chose not to cross-examine him because he established things. But, by my recollection, he said the taillight was partially cracked, but they never asked him to really explain, I think. On cross-examination, I'm curious why they didn't show him the picture that Proctor took. And said, is this what you saw? And presumably he would say, that's absolutely not what I saw. The tow truck driver, same idea. Maybe emphasize that if Proctor is such an experienced lead detective who called, as you recall, a tow truck before he ever met Karen Reed, which tells you that the fix was in.
Right.
Why not really dig in deeper on Proctor, this trained investigator? How did you not take a picture of the taillight when you first came upon the SUV in Dighton, when you had already called the tow truck and had already told us you knew that you were arresting her for hitting him, and you knew or you believed there was a cracked taillight, things like that.
Yeah. Here we go. Do you think that someone got to the jurors? I know that's been floating around there.
No, I think, jury selection is tough. You never know what you're going to get.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Ashley says, will the prosecution speak to the O'Keefe family to confirm if they want Karen tried again, or do they just want to do what they want? I can't imagine going through all that again if I was a family member.
If we were talking about a normal DA's office, which I would suggest the Norfolk DA is not, they would certainly factor in a victim's family. It doesn't mean they would give them literally the power to decide, but I think they would factor it in. These people, I don't think would factor in anything other than what Michael Morrissey decides is best for Michael Morrissey.
Let's see. Priscilla asked a question. Could Lally be used as a witness because he lied about the inverted video?
This is something I said elsewhere. So that's interesting. That's a good question. To me, the inverted video and the Sally Port is the single most big issue that the advantage of time gives the defense. And I think if they solve this question, the case is over, because if they can prove that it was tampered with by somebody in the Canton police or whoever, if they can prove that Proctor was in there doing something, if Higgins was in, whatever it is, and they all lied about it, I mean, that to me is game changer. Now, I would try to consider Lally a witness, because if you can do that, you potentially could get him kicked off the case if he's a witness. If he's a witness, he can't try the case. And the argument would be, him and Yuri watched the video, I believe they said, before they put it on.
Yeah.
And you'd have to think that they discussed the video and what it shows and why it's all fakakta, if you will.
That's so
interesting. I don't know who else was present or not in that meeting, but if nobody else was present, I would make an argument that Lally is a material witness on that point, and as such, under what they call the witness advocate rule, he can't try the case. He's a witness. And then, what is the DA? How do they argue against that? I'm not saying they would have the right to call him, but he potentially could be a witness, especially if he fully knows that Buchanan lies, and which I fully expect Buchanan to do, as I think most sane people do, based saw from him previously. And if Lally knows he's lying, then, the argument should be, Judge, we need to introduce that evidence, and the only person that can give us that evidence is Lally. So I would try that. I think that's a very, I don't know that it'll work, but I would absolutely, with a straight face, suggest that Lally is a witness, depending on what they learn about the video. But this video Sally Port thing, I think, is the single most biggest issue to preventing a retrial if they can solve it.
Yeah, and it's funny because Danielle read my mind as you were just speaking about this, and she literally word for word, I was going to say the same thing. It just blows my mind that anybody could see those videos and not think that something is up.
Clearly, and it also turned up in the middle of trial. Okay,
Yeah.
and you have people appearing and disappearing. Clearly, I mean, I'm not a technical expert, but there are plenty out there. It clearly appears to be a splice and a video over. There's this issue about whether the tow truck driver drove it in or not. Also, when they show you moving the SUV in, the snow pile is already there.
There.
Yep.
Are we to believe they had another vehicle in the Sally Port during the snowstorm? I don't think so. It's Canton. They have probably 4 crimes a year, most of which appear to be dead bodies, by the way, in that town.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
But it's something, I mean, I think an 8-year-old could figure out that the video is tampered with. there's something going on
Yeah, and then
here.
there's people jumping all over the place, and they're like phantom appearing, and like, how do you not look at that and go,
I
Right.
like,
listen.
what's going on?
I thought during the trial the next day, I thought the defense was going to scream and yell and say, this outside of the presence of the jury, this is outrageous. They're perpetrating a fraud on the court. We want answers, and make the judge look at the DA and say, do you have an answer for this? Because, as the minister of justice in this courtroom, I'm a little concerned that you're doing this, but the judge apparently is just, whatever. Next, who's your next witness?
So crazy. It's so
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see, Lindsay, if the state could chooses not to re-prosecute, is she free, meaning Karen?
Yeah.
Or could they decide years from now and go on and press, and if the press has died down, and charge her again?
No, they have to.
No.
They have to try her within a year. If they're not going to try her, they're going to have to dismiss the indictment. If the indictment is dismissed, she's free and clear.
Right.
She gets her bill back, right? The $80,000.
Yeah.
What's that?
She gets her $80,000 in bail money back as well, right?
Yeah, minus whatever fees if there's a bail bondsman and court costs and all that crap. Yeah.
Okay.
Mary, and this is funny. We talked about this off air, but yeah, why not bring this up? Mary,
big
and I think, but you made some,
to the post.
yeah, you made some really great points about this, Mark, and I want you to kind of describe that to the viewers, talk about to the viewers. So the New York Post published that fake AI video of Karen and Alan Jackson. Do they have any recourse? Probably most likely, I would think. I don't think it's probably high on their priority right now, I would think.
Probably not, but if it is provably fake and they write a letter to the Post and warn them and basically say, you need to take this down or else, they will. Yes, even the New York Post does not want to literally publish these fake videos. I think this is all a smear job to try to get Jackson to go home.
I mean, and explain why. Like we were talking, like why would they be out in public? You know what I mean? Doing this.
Well, no, I mean, look, I don't even. I mean, I find all of this unseemly.
Right.
He's
the timing of it.
He's sacrificing his family life to come out here for months because he believes in a client's innocence. He should get credit for that. And they're all living in this hotel in Boston, whatever. If you even wanted to believe this nonsense, they're living in a hotel. They don't need to go on the street in front of a steakhouse in front of 50,000 people and grope.
Cameras are going to be everywhere.
I mean, honestly, this reeks of like, you've got to be kidding me, just as a matter of common sense. So, and that's without even getting to the metadata and all that nonsense. Why would they be doing this on the street? It makes no sense.
And it was funny too, because I said to Mark offline and Mazza, I said, I almost think that I saw this. This was something that had popped up before, and I don't know if it was like a reality show or something. And I'm like, clearly you can see that they put AI, images over the faces. But
this is so sleazy. And they put that woman's name who's on her little press tour, the one that you guys all call Krusty Panties, whatever her name. They put her name in the New York Post. They put her on court TV with all this nonsense, and they're like falling right into the nonsense. And this is just, it's gross. I mean, it's just, they're trying to make her look like she's some kind of slut. They're trying to make him look like he's some philandering
on his wife, right?
Well, it's unseemly, and it's. If it's not real, particularly, that's even worse. But I think they're just trying to get him to go home. That's what
I personally zoomed in on one of the images, and I noticed that there was a color pattern change right underneath Karen's neck, like right here. You can see how it's like almost like a dark greenish, then it changes to like more of a nighttime color. It's like it's like chopped. You can tell it's cropped.
I think Microdots needs to get on it. Come on, Microdots, get on it.
By the way, I mean, again, we really shouldn't be giving this any sense of credibility because it appears to be not credible. Yeah. But it is actually not a violation of the Massachusetts disciplinary rules if it were even true. Like, that's not legally unethical. Just, again, I don't want to give it any oxygen because I think it's disgusting, but it doesn't impact the case at all or his ethical and professional responsibilities at all. She's a free single woman entitled to do whatever. I mean, this is all just nonsense by people who are trying to foment dissent, I think, amongst their team.
For sure. All right, so we got the last one here that came is if Morsi resigns, will a new temporary DA or newly elected DA be able to make the call to not retry the case? Or how about this, to try the case?
Yeah, I mean, if you get rid of Morrissey, although I mean, is that really happening in the next couple months?
Right.
Not likely. But if you replace him, yeah, whoever the new DA is, they wear the big boy pants. They get to make the decisions. And you would hope that, unlike Morrissey, who is probably being unethical in the sense that trying a case knowing that the scientific evidence doesn't support it, that a new DA who would come in would say, I can't try this case. I don't know what she did or didn't do, but I know she didn't run him over. And if the only theory we have is that she ran him over and we know she didn't do that, then what a responsible prosecutor says is, then I'm not trying her for running him over. So we're done here.
Right. So, you know, where do we go here? Where do we go from here, Mark? You know, like, what is Karen's legal team looking like over the next couple of weeks to months? Obviously, we're hearing that the Commonwealth has put out there they're going to retry this case.
They have to say that. That's the right thing to say right away.
Sure, but if that's so, where does this go now?
I mean, if they're really seriously going to retry it, then they prepare to retry it on both sides. I don't see how that could happen anytime soon. There are logistic problems. You have 2 out of the 3 lawyers do not live here, and it's not, and they've been away from their families for 2 months. They have other cases in California, and you can't just assume that because, you know, the judge says, I'm doing this on August 15th, that they drop everything in life and say, yes, ma'am. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
And, you know, she has a right to a counsel of her choosing. So believe it or not, Judge, they get input on when they're available within reason. You also have to line up all these witnesses for both sides. It's not easy. So I think it takes months. I think at the earliest, you're looking late fall at the earliest. And during that time period, I think the defense, again, they have investigators, they have subpoenas, they have brilliant lawyers strategizing, and they're going to, as effective as they were the first time, I would expect them to be 3 times as effective the second time.
I think there's going to be a lot of fallout in between all that time. I think so much more stuff's going to come out.
I agree. And that time is only going to benefit them too, with the feds and other things, the pressure on Morrissey, the Proctor problem. Also, I wouldn't put it past other witnesses coming forward, maybe being a little more courageous given how, you know, this is going. You know, you've heard rumors that there was some PI who knew something. Maybe that leads to something. You know, you've heard, what does Proctor do? I don't know. You know, does he play ball with the feds because he's on the outs? I don't know. I mean, if he was going to do that, he probably shouldn't have perjured himself a couple of weeks ago. That doesn't help him. But there's all kinds of things that could really harm the DA here. But it's not going to get better for them. I mean, that's the thing. It can only get better for the defense.
Right. Because time, like you said, Mark, time is only going to benefit the defense.
Time, preparation, generating and developing more evidence. The DA is not going to get any of that. And the DA right now is at their high watermark. They somehow hung the jury, which I'm sure they are like saying, oh my God, how the hell did we do that? They're never going to do that again. I mean, they're never going to get 12 people that are ever going to convict her. So they're at their high watermark.
It's funny we say about time and defense. You know, I've been following the Koberger case out in Idaho, and you know that's not scheduled to go to trial until 2025. And you know his public defender lawyer has done an extremely good job of delaying that trial and getting time. And you know that, like you said, that's only going to benefit the defense in some cases. And you know, I'll be very amazed. I'm going to be very curious to see what type of defense they come out with in the Koberger case. I mean, I've been pretty straightforward on that, my opinion on that here on the channel. But that's going to be a really interesting case as well too.
The other thing too is, I mean, if you're Karen Reed's defense team, speaking from a strictly selfish standpoint, you want them to try Turtle Boy first. You want them to try Brian Walsh first. Any more craziness with these people in Norfolk County and more transcripts
it just keeps coming out,
more wackiness, more, you know, kookarama going on. that can only help them. So I'm not saying they want to like serve them up as sacrificial lambs, but you know, wouldn't you want all these McCabe's and Alberts to come in and scream and yell about how we've been harassed? I mean,
what do you think about them coming in on closing arguments?
Oh,
What'd you think about that?
I thought it was, you know, Frankie Pentangeli's relative sitting with Don Corleone. I mean, that's, in fact, I posted a funny picture. I posted a picture of Don Corleone, Pentangeli's brother, and, you know, Kate, his wife. And it was funny. It was literally like them. And, I mean, I thought it was pathetic in many ways, but there's nothing illegal about it. I thought it was probably a way where the O'Keefes were not trying to intimidate per se the O'Keefes, but they were sending a message to the jury: we're okay with the goon squad, so you should be too.
Yeah.
I thought the fact that Colin Albert was there was ridiculous and contrived, particularly because, I mean, Jennifer McCabe testified, whether you believe it or not, how close she was to John O'Keefe. Okay, take that at face value for this purpose. Brian Albert, I was experiencing shock and horror.
John was my friend, and I loved him, and we were in shock and horror.
That was real good. Brian Albert, you know, claimed he was friendly.
Can I see the transcript so I can read it?
Right. You know, same police department. Okay, maybe Colin had no relationship with John O'Keefe other than, like, you know, harassing him, running through his yard, and he was a kid. He could care less who John O'Keefe was, whether he had something to do with the crime or not. So why is Colin Albert sitting there? That was a contrived thing because that's who they accused. And if you go by that theory, the most interesting thing is who wasn't there, which is Higgins.
Hey, I don't even know if this is going to be available. Can we FOIA this stuff? You know, a lot of people have been asking that. Can you start like just getting case information and files now that it's all out in court in public?
I mean, the problem with FOIL, you know, FOIL, or a Freedom of Information law request, is assuming the laws are the same in every state, which they probably are. They have a litigation exception while there's ongoing litigation where they're going to respond and say you get nothing. And what they're going to say is, we have a court date on July 22nd to set a trial date. So
it's really not.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Eventually you would get a lot. Right now, they're going to run you around for, you know, a year.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
I just got a FOIL request a couple of weeks ago. I actually posted this. It was funny. A letter dated, you know, June of 2024, responding to my FOIL request from June of 2020. And I'm like, thanks a lot. And
yeah, thanks.
Well done. This is helpful. Very helpful.
Finally got it right.
Like,
oh boy. Anyway, Mark, look, I know you had a super long day. I appreciate you coming on here. Mazza, I appreciate you coming on here. Always love talking to you, Mark. It was great talking to you the first time around here. I'd love to have you back at some point and chop up again here if we get any new information and stuff. I don't know. Any final thoughts? I'll go to Mazza first and then let Mark finish it up, and then we'll end the live here today.
Well, like I said, it feels like a 60% victory this past week. In a way, I'm kind of happy that the jury deliberation process came to an end. Preferably, I would have preferred a not guilty verdict so we can all just, you know, Karen primarily and her family primarily can move on with their lives and then move on to other things, primarily a lot of lawsuits against individuals and entities that deserve to really get whacked hard in the courtroom. No, we're going to keep standing behind Karen. I think as supporters, you know, not only am I coming on here as essentially a social media personality now, but additionally, primarily, I'm a supporter first and foremost. And, you know, for me and all of us, it's just time to continue digging in. I think this week, feel free to take a little bit of a rest, but in the coming days and weeks, moving on to the 22nd and beyond, and we'll start to hunker back down in again and start to pick it back up. I'd recommend that anybody that's been holding signs to keep doing that on a weekend basis. If you can, just keep those signs going, just to keep spreading awareness of this case and the fact that we're still looking to free Karen Read. So let's make sure we're keeping up with that. Continue to donate to Karen Read's legal defense fund. The website was down, but now it's back up.
Yeah.
So continue to make donations to that. Continue to just help Karen out with this defense process, so she can continue to defend herself and have the funds and means to do so. And again, let's just keep doing what we've been doing. It's an elongated process now. It's basically overtime, essentially, or it's the start of a new game. And we're just going to keep doing what we need to do and continue to stay positive and fight those battles. We won this mistrial hung jury is a win still. That they failed to convict her. They failed to put her in send her to prison. She went home Monday, and she's at home or on vacation now. And ultimately, they failed. So they round one went to us.
Yeah.
The game one went to us. So at that all said, it's going to be a longer process than we all expected, but we're all going to stay in here and continue to back her up because we're not going anywhere. And primarily, we ain't got no quit.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Mark, final thought?
Look, I agree. The hung jury, it's a win. It's not, again, not a win with a capital W, but if you look at it from the perspective of who's the big loser with the hung jury, it's the DA. Okay. You're going to say I'm crazy for saying this. This is worse than an acquittal for them. If it's an acquittal, it's over. Whatever happens, happens. But now the pressure remains on them. The feds ratchet it up. Now you have incredible lawyers who are like going to redouble their efforts and be pissed off and want to slaughter them and humiliate them even worse. They're going to make the case even stronger. They're going to solve the Sally Port issue. The scandal's going to grow. Proctor has become Proctor. What does the DA do? There's pressure from the governor. Morrissey is running around, with all this other stuff. What do I do with this Walsh case? Because it's worse for them. She's not going to get convicted. It sucks in the sense that, it elongates the process probably for several months, but this is worse for the DA. And the worst thing that could have happened for them is exactly this. It's not the best thing that could have happened for Karen Read, but this is the worst possible thing that could have happened for the DA. And, her lawyers and they'll take off a couple days, maybe the holiday, they'll regenerate, recalibrate, and they'll come back most likely stronger than ever, more motivated than ever. And again, they're going to want to just kill, and they will. And ultimately, she'll be at some point exonerated, whether that's a dismissal or an acquittal. And, for her perspective, then she will work towards demonstrating actual innocence rather than this kind of, it was a mistrial, so she's still guilty, which publicly is unfortunate. But I agree with Mazza. She's home eating dinner with her family, doing what she wants. And that's better than the alternative, which is, eating bologna sandwiches twice a day in a prison cell, which she's never going to be in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree. Listen, I want to thank every single person that joined this chat tonight, all of the subscribers that have come across all these amazing channels and these creators and these wonderful people that have contributed to, getting this message out about Karen Read. I got to say, Mark, I take, I commend you a lot for taking the stand that you have in this, because a lot of lawyers, I don't think, would do this type of thing, to come out and be very, very pro Karen Read. And I think it's pretty amazing you and Melanie Little, really had the gusto to come out and just be like, no, this is wrong, and we're standing with this. Where you see a lot of lawyers that, in my opinion, I think they kind of walk the line. I think, I saw that in some of the other law tubers at first, and they've kind of swung a little bit more. And to me, it's a little inauthentic, because they're gauging their audience, how, they might come into something, start talking about this and try to walk the middle line. And then as their audience grows, they're feeding off that, and they tend to lean a little bit more towards Karen. You didn't do that. You came right out right away. You said, no, this is wrong. And I'm going to take you through the process of why. And you've done such an amazing job on all the platforms you've joined. So I can't say better things about you. And again, all the people that have come to this platform, all the people that have stood out in that heat, in the freezing cold for the last 2.5 years and supported, year and a half, and really have supported Karen as this audience has grown. Listen, Turtle Boy did a phenomenal job of getting this case out there in public, because like Alan Jackson said to me the day that I sat in court and got to meet him privately before we went up to the courtroom, he said that, you know, with all of you, meaning everybody collective that has come into this case and supported Karen publicly, this would be a lot different, you know, and she may not have that courage to push forward, but she damn well does now. And she has a lot of supporters behind her, and we will continue to fight, continue to get donations made to her defense fund. I will not stop. I've made this promise. I will not stop until Karen Reed's name is free and clear, and she can just go on with her life. So,
yeah, let me just say real quick, in terms of like supporting Karen Reed, I guess I do, and I think she's innocent, but it's not an activist thing for me. It's based on evidence, facts, common sense, and one of the first things when I first learned about this, this is kind of funny, and Mazza, you know this because we spent a lot of time with Mike on the other stuff. In the beginning, they first asked me to come on to talk about Wendy Murphy because I saw things that she did that were just, as a lawyer, were just odious, and you just couldn't let it stand. And I don't know if you remember this, Mazza, but I said I don't really know much about the case, so don't really ask me about the case.
Yeah,
but I'm happy to learn. And, it didn't take long to see that this is a travesty. And my kind of initial thought was they shouldn't be trying her. But I kind of wanted to go one step further, which was, I don't know why she's charged, let alone being tried, which I think a lot of people are like, gee, how do you think that? And it's all evidence-based. So it's not activist per se, but the facts are what they are. And what I initially said was, I know she's not guilty. She's probably actually innocent. And then when the ARCA stuff came out,
you're like, there it is.
That's actual innocence, people. If she didn't hit her, whatever else you think, that's not a crime. So that's actual innocence. So I think what they're doing to her is terrible. I think the support she has is fantastic. Her family, her friends, her supporters. And I agree with you. I mean, people should keep it alive, and hopefully you want to believe that a prosecutor will do the right thing. The sad thing is this DA's office is as awful as it gets. They don't do the right thing. And the real scandal here is, why are they prosecuting someone they know, again, scientifically, is almost certainly not guilty? So how are they even justifying this? It has to be some personal reason, and
they just need that person, Mark. That's what it is. And they thought Karen Reed was the weakest one, and she's not. She's the strongest one out of all these people. Clearly, clearly.
Well, it's stronger than they bargained for. That's for sure. They never would have thought they would have got this kind of fight. I love the way Karen looked on the front of the courthouse steps when Alan Jackson and David Unetti were speaking. She had the most powerful posture that I've ever seen her have, exuding absolute confidence. Like, yeah, that's right. I'm innocent. They couldn't send me to prison. I told everybody all along, kind of posture. And I was just sitting there, I was watching it back on my show when I got home, because I hadn't watched it yet, because we're all over on the field because the state police wouldn't let us over. And I'm watching it back because I wanted to see it. I'm like, wow, look at her right now. It was just so.
Let me show you this real quick before we head out. I just want to show this picture Kelly Reed took, and I don't know if you've seen this, Mark. This is pretty amazing photo. Let me pull this up real quick, and then we'll head it out for the night. But I want everybody to see this if you haven't seen it. Check this out. This is so powerful. Something like out of a movie. You can't make this stuff up. It's like a movie. Look at this.
Oh yeah.
It's so powerful. Yep. And look at the hands on Karen's mom on David Unetti's back, just really, really great stuff. But very, very powerful.
Yeah,
you can't make this stuff up. It's like a movie. You can't make it up.
No, and it's really interesting because you've been out there. Obviously, I met you out there, and Mazza, you've been out there, and there's all this support, and it's loud. It's all the time. And can you imagine being Adam Lally and having to walk and hear that every day? Psychologically, I mean, just as a human being, what am I doing? Why are they so? This is an alleged murder of a police officer. the idea that the public support is like 95-5 in favor of someone accused of intentionally murdering a police officer who, by all accounts, was a popular, decent man, and the defendant is getting all the support, that's unheard of.
Yeah.
Absolutely unheard of. And that's very telling to me.
Well, because we know the evidence. I mean, the evidence speaks for itself. I mean, that's why we stand behind this. And again, you know, it could be anybody in this room that this could happen to. And you know, and it needs to stop. And hopefully this changes the system. I don't think it's going to, but maybe it opens some eyes. And it's definitely opened my eyes to a lot of things in the way that I look at law enforcement and stuff
small
like that.
victories. If you get, picked up in Norfolk County by the state police, Proctor will not be looking for news.
Yeah.
That, that I'm certain of. So, small benefit to start.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. We're going to end the show here. I'm going to hit the outro again. I want to thank everybody for coming in this evening and checking out the show. What a great panel. We'll get Jess over some time with Mark. I know Mark wants to meet Jess.
Yeah.
So
Never met her.
yeah, we'll reschedule and do something again, in maybe a couple of weeks. We'll give everybody brain to kind of come down a little bit because we've all gone through a lot. I just want to say this, everybody, happy 4th of July. Enjoy your weekend. Be safe. Spend time with your friends and family. Hug your loved ones because you never know. And
your dogs.
Again,
be careful with the dogs on July 4th.
That's right. Thank you all. And Mark and Mazza, thank you so much again for jumping on. And, we'll do this again sometime soon. All right, everybody. Have a good night. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.